Welcome to ANN7 Prime. Now we are joined in studio by former President Mr. Kgalema Motlante. Kgalema Motlante is chairing a 17-member panel which is assessing the effectiveness of key legislation passed since 1994. Today was the 5th consultation for that panel. Good evening to you, sir, and thank you so much for joining us here on ANN7 this evening.
And evening to the viewers.
It's an absolute pleasure having you in studio, sir. I want to discuss and sort of lay the groundwork. Tell us about this high-level panel, what exactly the purpose is here, and what you would expect the conclusion to be.
Well, the background is that the legacy report of the 4th Parliament, which ended in 2014, recommended that the 5th Parliament should consider taking a pause in order to assess efficacy and impact of legislation in 4 broad areas. First area being poverty, unemployment, and inequality, and the second broad area being production of and equitable distribution of wealth, and the third being land reform, restitution, redistribution, and tenure rights. And the fourth being nation building and social cohesion or social exclusion. Yes. So in December 2015, the Speakers Forum, which consists of speakers from the National Assembly right down to the legislatures, who had, looked into the legacy report and decided that indeed they should prioritize this assessment of legislation. So they then approached 17 of us and constituted us into this high-level panel.
Mr. Motlante, something that I feel is of utmost importance is obviously the inclusion of all South Africans here, allowing them to come forward and be a part of this. Is there that option? Are South Africans encouraged to come forward and be involved here? And also just re-emphasize the importance of actually reviewing, laws that has been passed since democracy.
Yes, this is a participatory process because we call for submissions, written submissions from stakeholders, organized formations, researchers, experts, and we also convene roundtables, with experts, because we divided ourselves into 3 working groups. So each working group can, organize roundtable discussions. And we also interact with the reports compiled by Chapter 9 institutions, the portfolio committees, and so we felt it important for the panel to have these outreach programs, to go out into the provinces and hear from South Africans what their lived experience is, how legislation has either impeded them or enabled them to improve on quality of lives they lead.
Mr. Motlante, you were saying earlier that this is now the 5th province. Gauteng was the 5th province. There are plans to visit other provinces as well. But just talk me through, why you feel, or how you got involved in this high-level panel, and why you feel of such importance to be part of this.
Well, we were all approached by the speaker, and we couldn't, refuse and walk away from this daunting responsibility, because it's quite a daunting responsibility. It's an honor, but also a daunting responsibility to assess impact of legislation, because our parliaments have been crafting and passing legislation with the aim of improving on quality of life of South Africans, and so there was need to do the assessment. So we've been, tasked with that responsibility.
And within the 5 sessions that has already been completed, is there some sort of clearer understanding of those rules and laws or acts that have been passed since democracy that are no longer relevant or no longer in line with the Constitution? Could you expand on that?
Well, we've put together a compendium of legislation relevant to the scope of the panel, and so that is accessible to South Africans. But of course, the situation is uneven. People who do research, who've been involved in specific areas of work, already have lots and lots of data and information. The Chapter 9 institutions are called upon from time to time to intervene where either implementation is slack and or people are prejudiced by sheer, failure to implement the law. Give you an example, there's a law which protects farm tenants from being evicted from the farms. And so if they get evicted nonetheless and walk into a police station, the police simply ask one question, whose land are you referring to? And he says no. If the victim says it's so-and-so's land, they say, well, please don't come and give us unnecessary work here. Yeah. So you got to have, this is what people are sharing with us. And so we'll have to recommend very strongly that, in that kind of information should be available in charts that can be distributed to all the police stations. So that particularly police stations in rural and small towns where, there's a likelihood of such labor tenants being evicted from the land here.
Now, Mr. Motlante, the EFF has launched a public campaign against all apartheid laws. What is your view with regards to this very public campaign motivated or brought forward by the economic freedom fighters? Do you agree with this campaign?
Well, political parties will have their own programs. We are not a political formation, and our focus is based on the mandate that was given to us, and to the extent that legislation is out of sync with the provisions of the Constitution as a supreme law of the land, we will be able to point that out in our report here.
And with regards to the Righteous Assemblies Act, what is the view around that, and whether that should be scrapped or continued, because it is a law that was brought forward during apartheid?
Well, as I said, there was a time in the parliament when all laws had to be harmonized with the Constitution. And I recall that at some point there was an idea that perhaps the best way to do it is to have an omnibus legislation, which simply repeals all past legislations. But, laws, people who craft laws will tell you that even a minor amendment always entails going back to the original intentions behind a piece of legislation. And if it had been amended at various times, you got to try and get the rationale behind those amendments as well. So that is why, eventually the idea of an omnibus legislation didn't work. And so each and every piece of legislation had to be repealed to ensure that there is harmony between the Constitution as a supreme law and all other pieces of legislation.
Mr. Motlante, let's move away from the high-level panel for a short while. Earlier today, COSATU briefed the media on its Central Executive Committee meeting and the outcomes thereof. In that, they backed Cyril Ramaphosa for succession. There's been a lot of controversy around Cyril Ramaphosa, his role in the Marikana massacre, his links to big business. What do you make of COSATU coming forward and publicly backing Cyril Ramaphosa?
Well, I wouldn't want to confuse roles. I'm here really as, part of the high-level panel.
Yes.
So I would rather not comment on, decisions of formations such as COSATU and so on. I suppose we can only respect their decisions. So, yeah.
Any way that you would throw your name back into the hat?
No, not at all, not at all, not
No?
at all. I think it's a bad idea, really, to think of anyone, who's of an advanced age as I am, to assume responsibilities. I think, you need younger, fresh minds who will be able to introduce innovations and bring the energy, the required energy. All we can do is to ensure that, we lend support. Yeah.
Mr. Motlante, speaking about ANC stalwarts and so forth, recently we've seen something called #Save South Africa really come to the fore. We saw the campaign program take place earlier this week, where we've really seen ANC stalwarts backing that campaign and asking for change in South Africa. We saw the likes of Ahmed Kathrada being involved there as well. What are your views with regards to this?
Well, I have no views about that, other than just to respect, the views of people like Ahmed Kathrada. He's a true stalwart. Tried and tested leader of our people. And so, I'm sure that whatever pronouncements or positions that he adopts are well considered here.
You were not part of the 101 Stalwarts Corps. Was there any specific reason why?
No, I'm not a stalwart. I'm not a stalwart, actually. As you can see, I'm up to my ears with the work of the panel and other work here.
And with regards to, the call by certain stalwarts to have the ousting of President Jacob Zuma, do you have any view with regards to what is happening with the succession battle within the ANC and with, certain ANC stalwarts themselves coming forward and asking for the president to step down?
My only interest in the ANC is really political education. That's the work that I do for the ANC. But all other issues, I'm out of the leadership of the ANC, and it's not my gift to try and dabble in those issues now.
You did say earlier that you respect Ahmed Kathrada's views. What do you say to certain individuals who sees what you just said as some sort of endorsement?
Come again?
You did say earlier that you respect Ahmed Kathrada's views with regards to #Save South Africa, with regards to people watching this interview and feeling that you saying that is some sort of endorsement for Ahmed Kathrada and his views with regards to President Jacob Zuma. What would your response be to those individuals?
To respect someone else's views is really to recognize and accept their right to express their views on any matter. That's all it means here.
With regards to slate voting within the ANC, there's been a lot of concern with regards to no slate, and that being what the ANC needs at this hour. Would you agree that individuals should be able to express their individual views and vote individually? What would you make with regards to that?
Well, the constitution of the ANC stipulates procedures, and I would really say that's what I go along with what is in the Constitution, rather than, whims of individuals here.
Mr. Motlante, I'd like to chat a little bit about the ex-public protector's report on state of capture and the controversies that we've seen unfold around that. There's been criticism from several quarters for the suggestion of what is being referred to as an unconstitutional remedy. Do you agree that it is malicious to take away the president's prerogative in this regard? Do you care to share your views on this?
No, I would rather not comment on that because if my memory serves me well, the public protector should not be criticized in public. It's actually an offense to do so. I seem to recall. So I would rather not do that here.
And with regards to NPA head Shaun Abrams, today we saw the Helen Sisman Foundation Freedom Under Law head to court to call for the President Jacob Zuma to sack the NPA boss with regards to the Minister of Finance and all the controversies surrounding him. Any view in that regard? Well,
I think the courts are very loath at entertaining matters that are precipitate. They normally would want to allow processes that are, provided for in law to unfold before they involve themselves. So I'm not surprised, unless, and of course my understanding is that the court felt that there was no agency. Yes.
Mr. Motlante, I just want to go back to the panel discussion, because that's why we had you in studio to start with. I just want you to speak to South Africans once again and really emphasize the importance of them being involved here and, the importance of them sharing their views and sharing their experiences in South Africa with regards to past laws laws that were passed before democracy, during apartheid, and even, within that time.
Well, we really cannot emphasize enough the need and responsibility for all South Africans to participate in this process of assessing efficacy and impact of legislation. And be it organized formations, organized communities, or individual citizens. We encourage them to come forward either in written form or to participate in these outreach programs and share with us how this legislation impacts on them, whether it impedes their endeavors to improve their quality of life, or it enhances or enables them to do that. That's what we are interested in. But this ought to be a participatory process.
Definitely.
Yeah.
At this point, has there been any legislation identified so far that needs to be repealed or reviewed?
No, not in that sense, but we certainly compiled a compendium of all relevant legislation in the 4 areas of focus.
Yes.
Yes. In other words, which legislations apply to poverty, inequality, and unemployment, and creation of and equitable distribution of wealth, and which ones are relevant for land reform or restitution or redistribution, and land tenure, and which ones are relevant for social cohesion and nation building.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Mr. Motlante, thank you so much for your time this evening. We appreciate you chatting to us here on ANN7. We appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you very much, Abigail, for the opportunity to come here. It's my very first visit to the studio.
And we're not lucky to have your very first interview here. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much.